The heat rising from the desert floor turned the air into liquid glass. Fort Bragg sprawled across the North Carolina wasteland like a fortress built from sand and steel, its boundaries marked by chain-link fencing that stretched toward a horizon shimmering with mirages. The firing range sat at the eastern edge of the base, a long strip of scorched earth where the crack of rifle fire punctuated the afternoon silence like a metronome counting down to something inevitable. In a room 3,000 miles away, darkness wrapped around a single figure seated before a wall of monitors. The blue glow from the screens painted shadows across a face weathered by decades of classified decisions. Dr. Isaac Volkov leaned forward, his fingers steepled beneath his chin, as he watched a woman step down from a dusty Uber sedan at the Fort Bragg main gate. The camera angle caught her profile. Angular features, eyes hidden behind aviator sunglasses, hair pulled back with military precision despite the civilian clothes she wore. She moved with the controlled economy of someone who had learned long ago that wasted motion could mean death. Volkov's lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it had reached his eyes. He touched a button on the console before him. "Target acquired," he said to the empty room. "Initiate protocol Phantom." The monitors flickered, cycling through different camera feeds. Gate security, motor pool, barracks, the range. All of Fort Bragg laid out like a chess board, and somewhere among those buildings, the woman who had just arrived would make her first move. "She came back," Volkov murmured, "just like I knew she would." He opened a file on the center screen. Photographs arranged in a grid, 8 faces, military ID photos from years past. 7 had red X marks slashed across them. Only one remained unmarked. The woman from the gate, Captain Eva Mercer. Volkov circled her image with his finger against the glass, the gesture almost tender. The last one standing. At the Fort Bragg security checkpoint, Eva Mercer handed her military ID to a young corporal whose uniform still held creases sharp enough to cut. He scanned it, frowned at his computer screen, then looked up at her with the uncertainty of someone whose manual didn't cover this situation. "Ma'am, you're not on the active duty roster." Eva's voice came flat, stripped of inflection. "I am now. Where's Colonel Harding?" "I'd need to verify." "Then verify." She didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there with the patience of stone while the corporal made 3 phone calls, each one passing her up the chain of command like a live grenade nobody wanted to hold. 15 minutes later, she walked through the gate. The base hadn't changed. Same prefab buildings baking in the heat, same diesel smell from the motor pool mixing with gun oil and sweat. She passed groups of soldiers running drills, their cadence calls echoing off concrete walls. A few glanced her way. Most didn't. She was just another officer in civilian clothes, unremarkable, forgettable. That was how she preferred it. The walk to the range took her past the barracks where she'd slept 5 years ago, back when this place had been home, and the people in it had been family. Back before Kabul, before the explosion, before everything turned to ash and classified files and names crossed off lists that officially didn't exist. She stopped at the edge of the range, watching a line of soldiers fire at distant targets. The Barrett M82s boomed like artillery, kicking up dust with each recoil. The shooters were good. She could tell by their breathing, the way they settled into position, the pauses between shots. But good wasn't the same as necessary. Good wouldn't keep you alive when the world collapsed into crosshairs and wind calculations, and the singular fact that missing meant someone died. A voice behind her cut through the rifle fire. "Mercer." She turned. Colonel Jack Harding stood 10 feet away, arms crossed over a chest that had gone from solid to slightly soft in the years since she'd seen him last. He was 62 now, she calculated. Silver threaded through hair that used to be black. new lines carved deep around his mouth. But the eyes were the same, hard and tired and carrying the weight of too many decisions that had seemed right at the time. "I thought you were dead," he said. "I was. And now?" "Now I'm not." She pulled off her sunglasses, met his stare without flinching. "I need access to the Ghost Unit archives." Something shifted in Harding's expression. Not surprise, something colder. "Those files don't exist, you know that." "Then I'll find another way." The silence stretched between them, broken only by another boom from the range. A target clanged in the distance. Harding studied her the way a doctor might study an X-ray of something that shouldn't be there. "You want back in," he gestured toward the range. "Prove you're still the shooter I remember now." Eva didn't answer. She just started walking toward the firing line. The soldiers stopped shooting when Harding approached. They recognized rank even before they saw insignia. He pointed at the nearest Barrett, and a young sergeant stepped aside, confusion written across his sunburned face. "Ma'am," he said to Eva. She knelt beside the rifle. 50 caliber. 29 pounds of steel and polymer designed to reach out past a mile and touch someone with the kind of precision that erased the distance between intention and consequence. She checked the chamber, ran her hand along the barrel to feel for heat distortion, glanced at the scope settings without touching them. "Target distance?" she asked. The sergeant blinked. 3,400 meters, ma'am, just over 2 miles. Winds running about 15 miles per hour southwest. Temperature 38 Celsius. Eva settled into position behind the rifle, cheek pressed against the stock. Through the scope the world narrowed to a single point, a steel plate barely visible against the heat shimmer. She didn't ask for a spotter, didn't check wind flags, just lay there breathing slow and deep, feeling the way the air moved against her skin. The wind wasn't constant. It gusted and died, gusted and died. She counted the rhythm, felt the barrel temperature through her gloves. Calculated drop and drift in the part of her mind that had been doing this math since she was 23 years old. Someone behind her laughed, a private probably, too young to know better. "No spotter," he said to his buddy. "Good luck with that." Eva inhaled, held it, let half the breath out. The rifle became an extension of her body. The crosshairs settled. The world went quiet in that space between heartbeats where nothing existed except the target and the bullet and the microscopic adjustments that would marry one to the other. She squeezed the trigger. The explosion slammed through the range like thunder. Dust erupted around the rifle. The recoil drove into her shoulder, familiar as an old scar. She rode it without moving, already cycling the bolt, chambering another round. 4 seconds of silence. Then clang. The sound echoed across 2 miles of desert, sharp and clean and perfect. Someone swore softly. Eva didn't look up. She was already settling in for the second shot. Same breath control, same calculations, but this time she adjusted 1 click right to account for barrel heat, 1/4 click down. She fired again. Another boom, another wait, another clang that sounded exactly like the first because the bullet had punched through the same hole, widening it by fractions of an inch that would show up on high-speed cameras as a single point of impact. Eva stood, cleared the chamber, laid the rifle carefully on its mat, turned to face Harding without a word. The soldiers stared. The young private who'd laughed had gone pale. Even Harding's expression had shifted into something she couldn't quite read. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. He pulled her aside, away from the line, to where the noise of the range became background static. His voice dropped low, meant only for her. "What are you really doing here, Mercer?" "Finding who killed my team." Your team died in Kabul. Official report. She looked at him through him. Official reports lie. Harding's jaw tightened. She could see him working through it, weighing how much he believed versus how much he was allowed to believe versus how much he wanted to know. Finally, he shook his head. You shouldn't have come back. Probably not. She put her sunglasses back on, but here I am. She walked away before he could answer, back toward the barracks, leaving Harding standing in the heat with questions he couldn't ask and answers he didn't want to hear. 3,000 miles away, Volkov replayed the shooting sequence on his monitors. He watched Eva's form, the way she'd settled into the rifle like coming home. Watched the targets register double impact. Watched Harding's reaction. She hasn't lost her touch, he said to the figure standing in the shadows behind him. Good. The protocol needs perfection. Should we extract her now? The voice was female, clipped, professional. No. Volkov zoomed in on Eva's face, frozen in the moment before she fired. Let her dig. The deeper she goes, the more she'll understand. He pulled up another file, more photographs. Eva Mercer and 7 others, all in combat fatigues, all young and sharp and alive. Ghost Unit 14. The designation appeared at the top of the page in bold letters, followed by lines of text so heavily redacted they looked like censored poetry. Classified. Terminated. Status. All personnel KIA, Kabul 2019. Volkov traced his finger across the faces. Stopped at one. A young man with Eva's eyes and a grin that suggested he'd never met a rule he couldn't bend. Sergeant Daniel Mercer, Eva's brother. Red X across his face like all the others. She doesn't know yet, Volkov said, but she will. He closed the file, opened another. This one showed a facility in Syria, satellite imagery dated 3 days prior. Inside one of the buildings, highlighted by thermal imaging, a single human form sat motionless in a locked room. Volkov circled the image. The last one standing, he repeated, and the first one to fall. Night fell over Fort Bragg like a curtain dropping on the first act of something inevitable. Eva sat alone in the barracks they'd assigned her, a single room with a cot and a locker and a window that looked out over the range. She'd refused officer quarters, preferred the enlisted space, fewer questions, less attention. Her laptop sat open on the small desk, screen glowing in the darkness. She'd been searching for 3 hours. Names typed into encrypted databases. Facial recognition scans run through military records. Every member of Ghost Unit 14 cross-referenced against casualty reports, burial records, death certificates. All came back the same. KIA killed in action. Kabul, Afghanistan, 2019. All except her. She pulled up a photograph from her personal files. 8 soldiers standing in front of a Chinook helicopter, somewhere in the mountains of Afghanistan. Dust on their uniforms. Weapons slung casual. Smiles that said they were young enough to think they were immortal. Eva stood second from the left. On her right, arms slung over her shoulders, her brother Danny grinned at the camera like he was posing for a high school yearbook instead of a classified operation that didn't officially exist. Ghost Unit 14. The designation meant nothing to anyone outside a very small circle. They'd been formed in 2015 as part of a Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency initiative that nobody talked about and fewer people knew about. Volunteers only. Elite shooters pulled from every branch of service. Their mission: test next-generation targeting systems integrated directly with human neural patterns. Biometric scopes that learned how their shooter thought. Rifles that adjusted for wind and elevation based on the shooter's muscle memory. Technology that turned good marksmen into surgical instruments of precision warfare. It had worked. For 4 years they'd run missions across 3 continents, eliminating high-value targets with a success rate that made conventional special forces look like amateur hour. No casualties, no failures, no publicity. Then Kabul. Eva's hand moved to the scar behind her left ear, hidden beneath her hair. Small, surgical, the entry point where they'd implanted the neural interface chip. She could still remember the procedure, the way her vision had changed afterward, the world suddenly rendered in targeting data and ballistic calculations that overlaid reality like augmented vision. She could also remember the headaches, the disorientation, the moments when the chip seemed to make decisions faster than her conscious mind could process. And she remembered the moment it had all gone wrong. Kabul, a compound on the outskirts. Intelligence said high-value target, minimal security. Ghost unit went in. Eva and Danny took overwatch positions on a rooftop while the others breached. Everything by the numbers. Textbook. Then the explosion. She remembered Danny shouting her name. Remembered the world turning white and loud. Remembered coming to in a crater, ears ringing, Danny's hand on her shoulder shaking her awake. Eva, run. She'd run, they both had, through smoke and debris and the stutter of automatic weapons fire, made it to the extraction point, climbed into the helicopter, looked back to do a head count. 6 missing. Danny was there, she was there, the pilot and co-pilot, nobody else. They'd circled back, found nothing but craters and fire and no bodies, which was wrong because there should have been bodies, should have been something. But there was nothing except ash and the smell of melted circuitry. Command had called it a catastrophic intelligence failure. Bad intel, wrong target, wrong compound. The explosion had been rigged, a trap meant for whoever came through those doors. Ghost Unit 14 was terminated. Survivors debriefed and reassigned with orders to never speak of it again. Eva got sent to a signals intelligence unit in Germany. Danny got posted to a logistics battalion stateside. 3 months later, Danny's death certificate arrived. Training accident. Nevada desert. No body recovered due to nature of ordnance involved. She tried to investigate. Hit walls. Classified. Need to know. Above your pay grade. Eventually she'd stopped asking questions and started running. Disappeared into civilian life with a fake ID and a new name and the kind of silence that felt like suffocating. That was 5 years ago. She closed the laptop, picked up the photograph again, stared at Danny's face until the details blurred. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the empty room. A knock at the door snapped her back. She slid the photo into her pocket, crossed to the door, opened it without asking who was there. Major Claire Donovan stood in the hallway. 40 years old, dark hair cut short, eyes that missed nothing. Eva recognized her from the intelligence briefings back when Ghost Unit was operational. Claire had been junior then, a captain running analysis. Now she wore Major's oak leaves and an expression that suggested she'd learned what happened to people who asked too many questions. "Captain Mercer," Claire said, "we need to talk." "About what?" "About why you're really here." Claire glanced down the hallway, checking for observers, "and about what you shouldn't be looking for." Eva stepped aside. Claire entered, moved to the window, kept her back to the wall. Old habits, the kind you picked up when trust became a luxury. "You've been accessing classified databases," Claire said. "Ghost Unit files." "Those files don't exist. Ask Colonel Harding." "Harding's lying." Claire's voice stayed level, professional. "The files exist. They're just buried deep enough that most people don't have the clearance to know they're buried." "But you do." "I did, once." Claire pulled a small USB drive from her pocket, set it on the desk. "Before I learned that some knowledge gets you killed." Eva looked at the drive, didn't touch it. What's on it? Proof that your team didn't die in Kabul. Not all of them. The room went very quiet. Eva could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the scar behind her ear starting to itch the way it always did when stress spiked. Explain. Claire shook her head. Not here, not now, but you need to know that Ghost Unit wasn't terminated because of bad intelligence. It was terminated because someone wanted it gone, wanted all of you gone. Who? The same person who's been watching you since you arrived at Fort Bragg. Claire moved toward the door, stopped, looked back. His name is Dr. Isaac Volkov, and 5 years ago he was Ghost Unit's chief architect. She left before Eva could respond. The USB drive sat on the desk like a landmine. Eva stared at it for a long time. Then she picked it up, turned it over in her fingers, felt the weight of whatever information it contained. Knowledge could get you killed, Claire had said, but ignorance could get you killed faster. She plugged the drive into her laptop. A single video file, no metadata, no date stamp, just raw footage from what looked like a security camera in a concrete room. The image quality was poor, the lighting harsh and industrial. In the center of the frame, a man sat strapped to a metal chair. Wires ran from his head to machines just out of frame. His eyes stared straight ahead, vacant and empty. Eva's hand went to her mouth. Danny. Older than the photograph. Thinner, beard grown out, but unmistakably her brother, alive, sitting in what looked like a cell or a laboratory or some nightmare combination of both. The video had no sound, just Danny sitting there breathing, existing. Then a figure in a white coat entered frame, checked the machines, made notes on a tablet, turned toward the camera for just a moment, face visible in profile. Eva hit pause, zoomed in, stared at the face until recognition slammed into her like a fist. Dr. Isaac Volkov. She knew that face, remembered it from briefings back in 2015 when Ghost Unit was being formed. Volkov had run the technical side, the implants, the neural interface programming. He'd been brilliant and intense and had talked about human potential the way other scientists talked about theoretical physics. He'd also been kind, patient with the volunteers, careful with the procedures. She'd trusted him. And now he had Danny. Eva pulled the drive out, stood, paced the small room like a caged animal. Her mind ran through scenarios, probabilities, tactical options. None of them made sense. If Danny was alive, why hide it? If Volkov had him, why keep him prisoner? If Ghost Unit was terminated, why was one member still breathing in a cell somewhere while the rest were listed as dead? She was reaching for her phone when footsteps thundered in the hallway. Multiple people. Running. Her door slammed open and Colonel Harding burst in, 2 MPs behind him, all of them armed. Mercer, Harding barked, step away from the computer. Eva didn't move. What's going on? Major Donovan is under investigation. She's been in unauthorized contact with a foreign intelligence operative. Anyone she's spoken to is being detained for questioning. Foreign operative. Harding's expression was stone. Dr. Isaac Volkov, Russian national, former Defense Department contractor, currently wanted by the FBI for espionage and theft of classified materials. Eva's world tilted. Russian. She'd never known, never thought to ask. Volkov's English had been perfect, his credentials spotless. He'd been vetted by the Pentagon, cleared by the Defense Intelligence Agency, trusted with America's most classified weapons research. And he'd been a Russian asset the entire time. Where is he now? Eva asked. That's classified. Where is my brother? Harding flinched, just slightly. just enough for Eva to see the truth written in the micro-expression that crossed his face before the professional mask slammed back down. He knew, had always known. The official story about Danny's training accident was a lie, and Harding had been part of selling it. Eva's hand moved toward the pistol on her hip. Instinct. The MPs saw it, raised their rifles. Harding held up a hand. "Don't," he said quietly, "please." She froze, hand hovering. 3 rifles pointed at her center mass. Math running through her head. Draw time versus trigger pull versus angles of fire versus the fact that even if she got her weapon out, she'd be dead before it cleared leather. But the math didn't matter, because this wasn't Kabul. These weren't enemy combatants. They were soldiers following orders, and killing them would make her the thing she'd spent her entire career fighting against. She lowered her hand. Harding exhaled, nodded to the MPs. They lowered their weapons but stayed alert. "I lied to you," Harding said. "About the files, about your team, about all of it." "Why?" "Because I was ordered to. Because 5 years ago, Ghost Unit became a liability instead of an asset, and when that happens, the machine eats its own." He moved to the window, looked out at the nighttime base. "Your team didn't die in combat, Mercer. They were executed by our own government." The words hung in the air like smoke. Eva heard herself ask, "Who gave the order?" "Above my clearance, but I know who carried it out." Harding turned back to face her. "Dr. Volkov was supposed to terminate all of you, every member of Ghost Unit. He refused, tried to save who he could. Your brother, you, because your neural implant had already malfunctioned and you were useless to the program. The others." "He didn't finish, didn't need to." Eva sat down hard on the cot. The room spun slightly. Too much information, too fast. She forced herself to breathe, to think, to process. "Where's Danny now?" "I don't know. After Volkov went rogue, he took your brother and disappeared. The intel community's been hunting them both for 5 years. No hits, no traces, until 3 weeks ago." "What happened 3 weeks ago?" Harding pulled out his phone, showed her a satellite image. Desert terrain. A facility half buried in sand. Coordinates in the corner, somewhere in Syria. NSA picked up communication traffic. Encrypted. Volkov's signature, we think he's there. "And Danny?" "If Volkov kept him alive this long, he's there too." Eva stood, "Then I'm going." "You can't, it's not authorized. Syria's a political minefield right now. No official operations." "I don't need authorization." "You need transport, equipment, intel support." Harding's voice softened. "You need help." She looked at him. Really looked. Saw the guilt carved into the lines around his eyes. The weight of 5 years carrying the knowledge that he'd lied to a woman about her brother's death. That he'd followed orders when those orders meant betraying people who'd bled for their country. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked. "Because I'm tired, simple, honest. Tired of lying, tired of watching good soldiers disappear into classified files. Tired of being the guy who follows orders instead of doing what's right." He met her gaze. "You have 48 hours. After that, I report this conversation and you're on your own." 48 hours to do what? "Whatever you need to do. I'll make sure the MPs don't follow you. I'll make sure certain files stay accessible. I'll make sure you have a window." He moved toward the door, paused. "But Mercer, don't trust Volkov. Whatever he tells you when you find him, remember he's been lying since the beginning, about what he is, about what Ghost Unit really was, about everything." Harding left. The MPs followed. The door clicked shut. Eva sat alone with the USB drive and the satellite photo, and the weight of knowing her brother had been alive this whole time, somewhere, kept like a lab animal by a man she'd once trusted. She opened her laptop again, pulled up the video, watched Danny sit in that chair, vacant and breathing, while Volkov moved around him with the casual efficiency of someone conducting research. "I'm coming," she whispered to the screen. She began to plan. 3,000 miles away, in a room full of monitors showing every angle of Fort Bragg, Dr. Isaac Volkov watched the feed from the hidden camera in Eva's barracks. Watched her watching the video he'd ensured Claire Donovan would deliver. Watched the precise sequence of emotions cross her face. Shock, recognition, rage, determination. He picked up a phone, dialed a number that didn't officially exist. "Phase 2, he said when someone answered. "She knows about the brother, she'll come looking." The voice on the other end asked a question. "No," Volkov replied. "Don't stop her, that's the point. She needs to believe she's hunting me. She needs to think she's in control." He smiled at the screen showing Eva's face frozen in determination. The best traps are the ones where the prey thinks they're the hunter. He hung up, pulled up another file. This one showed a compound in Virginia, security footage from yesterday. Men in tactical gear loading equipment into trucks, weapons, communications gear, medical supplies. Major General Richard Voss walked through frame, inspecting the operation with the calm oversight of someone accustomed to command. He stopped, looked directly at a camera, gave a subtle nod. Message received. Preparations complete. Volkov closed the file, opened one more. The original Ghost unit roster, 8 faces, 7 with red X marks. He clicked on Eva's photo, added text beneath it: active, engaged, operational. Then he clicked on Danny's photo, removed the red X, typed Asset 14, ready for deployment. The pieces were moving. The board was set. In 48 hours, Eva Mercer would leave Fort Bragg and begin the hunt that would lead her exactly where Volkov needed her to go. Not to save her brother, but to finish what had started 5 years ago in Kabul when Ghost Unit 14 stopped being an experiment and became something far more dangerous. The last protocol. The one that would prove whether humans enhanced with technology could be controlled, or whether they would always choose to be free. Volkov leaned back in his chair and watched the monitors flicker through their endless surveillance. Somewhere out there, Eva Mercer was checking her weapons, planning her infiltration, preparing to walk into the most sophisticated trap ever designed for a soldier who thought she couldn't be caught. He whispered to the screens, "Welcome home, Ghost." The words echoed in the empty room. And 3,000 miles away, in a barracks at Fort Bragg, Eva Mercer locked and loaded her pistol, shouldered a pack full of gear she wasn't authorized to carry, and walked out into the North Carolina night like a woman with nothing left to lose. The hunt had begun, but she didn't know yet that she was the prey. Dawn broke over Fort Bragg like a wound opening in the sky. Red and gold spilled across the horizon, painting the base in colors that reminded Eva Mercer of fire and blood, and the way Kabul had looked in those final seconds before everything fell apart. She stood in the shadow of the operations building, watching the first shift of soldiers move through their morning routines, and thought about all the ways a person could disappear. She'd left her barracks at 0300, walked across the base like she owned the night. Nobody stopped her. Nobody questioned. Harding had been true to his word. The MPs who should have been watching her quarters were conspicuously absent. The security cameras that should have tracked her movement had blind spots that lined up too perfectly to be accidental. 48 hours, he'd said, a window. She intended to use every second. The operations building sat at the heart of Fort Bragg, a 3-story concrete bunker that housed secure communications, intelligence archives, and the kind of servers that held information people died to protect. Eva knew the layout, had studied it years ago when Ghost Unit ran their training cycles here, knew which doors had electronic locks, knew which corridors the security patrols avoided because they led to classified areas that required clearances most guards didn't have. She also knew that somewhere in that building, in a server room accessible only to personnel with top-secret SCI clearance, sat the real Ghost Unit files, not the sanitized versions Harding had shown her, not the official reports that listed everyone as KIA, the actual operational records, mission logs, medical files, neural interface diagnostics. And somewhere in those files would be the answer to what Ghost Unit had really been, what the implants had really done, why the government had decided 13 elite soldiers were more dangerous alive than dead. She waited until the morning formation drew most of the base personnel to the parade ground. Then she moved. The side entrance to the operations building used an old-fashioned key card system. Eva had lifted a maintenance pass from the motor pool yesterday, cloned it using equipment she'd bought from a pawn shop in Fayetteville. The card reader beeped green. The door clicked open. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed against acoustic tile ceilings. The smell of floor wax and stale coffee filled corridors painted in the institutional beige that every military building seemed to favor. Eva walked like she belonged there, clipboard in hand, eyes forward, just another officer handling morning paperwork. She passed 2 junior enlisted who barely glanced at her, climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, found the corridor that led to the server room, and stopped. Colonel Harding stood outside the server room door, arms crossed, looking like a man who'd been waiting long enough to get tired of it. "Mercer," he said, no surprise in his voice, just resignation. Eva kept her hand away from her sidearm. "Colonel, I told you 48 hours. It's been 6. I'm impatient." Something that might have been a smile crossed his weathered face. "I noticed." He pushed off the wall, pulled a key card from his pocket, the kind with red diagonal stripes that marked it as high-level access. "You were going to break in. Probably would have triggered every alarm in the building. Gotten yourself arrested before you found anything useful." "Maybe." "Definitely." He swiped the card, the door unlocked with a heavy clunk. "So let's skip that part." The server room was cold and dark, the only light coming from rows of blade servers that blinked like Christmas trees in the shadows. The hum of cooling fans filled the air with white noise. Harding led Eva to a terminal in the corner, logged in with credentials that made the screen flash EYES only in red letters. "You've got 20 minutes," he said. "After that, the system logs my access, and people start asking questions I can't answer." Eva sat down. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with the speed of someone who'd spent years learning to type while wearing tactical gloves. She pulled up the Ghost Unit directory, watched folders expand into subfolders into files marked with dates and classification levels that would have made most intelligence analysts sweat. Harding stood behind her, watching the door. "What are you looking for?" "Medical records, neural interface diagnostics." Her eyes scanned lines of data. "I want to know what the implants were supposed to do versus what they actually did." She found the file, clicked it open, started reading. The clinical language tried to make it sound clean, professional, but underneath the medical terminology, the truth bled through like ink on wet paper. Ghost Unit 14 had been part of something called Project Prometheus. The goal: create soldiers whose reaction times and targeting accuracy exceeded normal human limitations by integrating artificial intelligence directly into the brain's visual cortex and motor control centers. The neural implants weren't just passive recording devices. They were active systems that could predict enemy movement, calculate ballistics faster than conscious thought, and override hesitation in combat situations. In short, they turned soldiers into weapons that thought for themselves. The early results had been promising. Test subjects showed 40% improvement in accuracy, 60% reduction in target acquisition time. Stress hormones remained stable even in simulated combat scenarios. The AI integration was seamless, natural. Then the side effects started. Headaches, disorientation, moments where test subjects reported feeling like they were watching themselves from outside their own bodies. The implants weren't just enhancing combat performance. They were changing how the soldiers thought, how they perceived reality. Some reported feeling emotionless during firefights, making kill decisions with the cold calculation of a computer program. Others reported the opposite, overwhelming emotion, guilt, horror at what they'd done, even when the targets had been legitimate enemy combatants. The medical staff recommended terminating the program. The neural interface was too invasive, the psychological effects too unpredictable. The Pentagon disagreed. They wanted to refine the technology, push it further, and they needed test subjects willing to take the risk. Enter Ghost Unit 14. Volunteers, elite shooters, people who understood that being on the cutting edge of military technology meant sometimes you bled. Eva had been number 7. Danny had been number 14. She scrolled through her own medical file. Read the notes from Dr. Volkov, who'd performed her implant surgery. His handwriting was neat, clinical, but she could see places where he'd gone back and added comments in different ink. Subject 7 shows exceptional integration. AI targeting assistance at 97% accuracy. Neural feedback stable. Recommended for operational deployment. Then 6 months later, a note in red ink. Subject 7 experiencing chip malfunction. Intermittent loss of targeting overlay. Recommend immediate extraction and replacement. But the replacement never happened, because 3 days after that note, Ghost Unit went to Kabul and everything fell apart. Eva touched the scar behind her ear. The implant was still in there, dormant, malfunctioning, a piece of technology that had been designed to make her superhuman and had instead failed at the worst possible moment. She pulled up Danny's file. Subject 14, same surgical notes, same integration success, but Danny's file went further. Additional procedures, experimental upgrades, something called neural override protocol. Eva, read faster. The neural override protocol was the next evolution. Not just enhancement, but control. The AI wouldn't just assist with targeting. It would be able to take full control of motor functions if the operator became incapacitated, or if command deemed it necessary. A soldier who could be remotely piloted. The implications made her stomach turn. This wasn't about making better warriors. This was about making obedient ones. Soldiers who would follow orders even if their conscious mind refused. Jesus Christ, she whispered. Harding leaned closer. What? They turned my brother into a remote control toy. She looked up at him. That's what this was really about, not enhancement, control. Who authorized this? Eva scrolled to the approval signatures, found one name that appeared over and over. Major General Richard Voss. She'd heard that name before, couldn't place where, but something about it triggered a memory like a stone dropping into dark water. Who's Voss? She asked. Harding's expression went carefully neutral. Senior officer, Pentagon assignment, oversees advanced weapons development. Is he here at Bragg? No, he's at JSOC headquarters in Virginia, Harding checked his watch. 17 minutes. Eva kept reading, found the mission reports from Kabul. The official version matched what she remembered: bad intelligence, wrong target, catastrophic explosion. But there was another file underneath. Classified one level higher. Eyes only for Voss. She opened it. The real report was 3 pages long, written by Volkov. It detailed how the Kabul mission had been a field test for the neural override protocol. Command wanted to see if Subject 14 could be remotely controlled during active combat. The target had been real. The intelligence had been accurate. But the mission parameters included a secret objective: activate Danny's override and see if he would complete the assignment even if his conscious mind refused. They'd used her brother as a lab rat. And when the test went wrong, when Danny's implant overloaded and 6 other members of Ghost Unit died in the explosion meant to cover up the failure, the Pentagon made a decision. Terminate all witnesses, bury the program, deny everything. Except Volkov had refused to execute Eva and Danny, had pulled Danny from the rubble, had faked both their deaths and disappeared before Voss's cleanup team could finish the job. Eva's hands shook. She forced herself to keep reading. The final entry was dated 3 weeks ago, an intelligence intercept. NSA signals analysis had picked up encrypted communications matching Volkov's signature. Location: Syria. Facility designation: Black Site Delta 7. But the intercept included something else: audio, a voice recording. Eva clicked play. Static, then Volkov's voice, slightly distorted but recognizable. Asset 14 shows full integration with version 2.0, neural override functioning at optimal levels. Subject remains conscious but unable to resist command protocols. Recommend proceeding to final phase. Another voice, one Eva didn't recognize. What about Subject 7? She'll come looking for her brother. When she does, we'll have both of them. The recording ended. Eva sat back. The cold from the server room seeped into her bones. The pieces were clicking together now. Volkov hadn't saved Danny out of compassion. He'd taken him, upgraded his implant, turned him into exactly what the Pentagon had wanted: a perfectly controlled weapon. And now he was using Danny as bait. 12 minutes, Harding said. Eva closed the files, wiped her search history, stood. I need transport to Syria. Out of the question. Then I'll find my own. Harding grabbed her arm. Listen to me. This is bigger than your brother. If Volkov perfected the neural override, if he's got a working version that can turn soldiers into remote-operated drones, every intelligence agency in the world will want it. The CIA, FSB, Mossad, the kind of people who don't care about collateral damage. So what do you suggest? Leave Danny in a cell while everyone fights over the technology in his skull. I suggest you think tactically instead of emotionally. Harding's voice was hard but not unkind. You go charging into Syria alone, you'll end up in a cell right next to him. Or dead, probably dead. Then come with me. The words hung between them. Harding stared at her. For a moment she saw the calculation running behind his eyes, the weighing of duty versus conscience, of orders versus what was right. I'm 62 years old, he said finally. I've got 2 years until retirement, a pension, a small house in Tennessee waiting for me. I've survived 3 wars and 4 Pentagon bureaucracies by knowing when to fight and when to stand down. And which is this? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside, both of them tensed. Harding moved to the door, cracked it open, looked out. The footsteps passed. He closed the door again. 5 minutes, he said. Then we need to be gone. Eva pulled out her phone, brought up a map of Syria, zoomed in on the coordinates from the intelligence file. The facility sat in the desert near the Iraqi border. Former CIA black site, abandoned after the drawdown, supposedly. But satellite imagery showed vehicle traffic, power signatures, signs of active occupation. "If I go," she said, "I'm not going quiet, I'm going loud. Full tactical, extract Danny and burn everything else to the ground. You'll need a team. I'll need you." Harding looked at her, really looked. She could see him making the decision in real time, watching 30 years of playing by the rules collide with the fact that sometimes the rules were written to protect the wrong people. "There's a cargo flight leaving for Jordan tomorrow night," he said. "Medical supplies for a field hospital in Amman. I can get you on the manifest as a courier. From Jordan you can cross into Syria, but after that you're on your own." "What about you?" "I'll cover your exit from Bragg. Make sure the right people don't ask the wrong questions for 48 hours. After that," he shrugged, "I'll probably be court-martialed, but I'll sleep better." Eva held out her hand. Harding shook it. His grip was strong, the handshake of a man who'd made too many compromises and was finally choosing not to make one more. They left the server room, walked back through corridors now filling with mourning personnel. Nobody stopped them. Nobody questioned. Just two officers going about their business. Outside, the sun had fully risen. The heat was already building. Eva turned to Harding. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me until you make it back alive." She walked away, didn't look back, didn't see Harding standing there watching her go, his expression somewhere between regret and relief. 3,000 miles away, in a facility that didn't appear on any official maps, Dr. Isaac Volkov watched the same scene unfold on his monitors. The cameras in Fort Bragg's operations building were supposed to be secure, but Volkov had installed backdoors into the system years ago, back when he'd still been a trusted Pentagon contractor instead of a fugitive war criminal. He watched Eva leave, watched Harding stand alone in the morning sun. "She's coming," he said to the figure standing in the shadows behind him. The figure stepped forward. Major General Richard Voss, 60 years old, gray hair cut military short, eyes like chips of ice. He wore civilian clothes but carried himself with the rigid posture of a man who'd spent 40 years in uniform. "Are your people ready?" Volkov asked. 20 operators, all former special forces, all willing to do what's necessary. Voss moved to stand beside Volkov, looking at the monitors. "When she arrives in Syria, we take her alive, along with the brother. And then we complete the project. Both of them already have the implants. We just need to upgrade them to version 2, full neural override." Voss smiled. It looked wrong on his face. Too calculated. Imagine it. Elite soldiers who never hesitate, never question, never refuse an order. The perfect warriors. Volkov said nothing. His expression remained neutral, but something flickered behind his eyes. Something that might have been doubt or disgust, or the kind of exhaustion that came from realizing you'd helped build something monstrous. Voss didn't notice. He was too busy watching the monitors, planning the operation, thinking about what two prototype super soldiers could accomplish once they were properly programmed. "How long until she reaches Syria?" Voss asked. 36 hours, give or take." "Good, that gives us time to prepare a proper welcome." Voss left. Volkov sat alone with his monitors and his thoughts and the weight of knowledge that had been crushing him for 5 years. He pulled up a different file, one that wasn't in any database, one he kept encrypted on a drive that never touched a network. Old photographs. Ghost Unit 14. 8 young soldiers who trusted him, who'd let him put experimental technology into their brains because they believed in serving their country, believed in pushing the boundaries of human potential. He'd believed it too, once, before he understood what his research would be used for, before he realized that the Pentagon didn't want enhanced soldiers. They wanted controlled ones. Before Kabul, when everything went wrong and he'd been given orders to eliminate the witnesses and had made the choice to save who he could instead. That choice had cost him everything: his career, his reputation, 5 years of running and hiding and watching over his shoulder for the kill teams he knew were hunting him. But it had also saved 2 lives: Eva and Danny. The problem was, saving them hadn't been enough, because the technology existed. The neural override worked, and as long as it worked, people like Voss would want it, would hunt for it, would do anything to acquire it. Volkov had spent 5 years trying to find a way to destroy the technology, to erase it from existence, but every solution led back to the same problem. The proof of concept was inside Danny's skull, the working prototype. As long as Danny lived, the neural override could be studied, replicated, mass-produced. There was only one way to ensure the technology died: kill the host. Volkov looked at Danny's photograph. Young, smiling, trusting. The boy had called him Doc with genuine affection, had joked about having a superpower once the implant was activated, had never imagined that the superpower would turn into a prison. "I'm sorry," Volkov whispered to the photograph. He closed the file, opened another. This one showed the facility in Syria: floor plans, guard rotations, security systems. And in the center of the complex, in a reinforced cell 20 feet underground, Danny Mercer sat strapped to a chair while machines monitored every electrical impulse in his brain. Volkov had kept him alive, had refined the neural override, had turned him into exactly what the Pentagon wanted. Not because he believed in the project, but because he needed time to find another way. And now time was running out. The flight to Jordan took 18 hours with refueling stops. Eva sat in the cargo bay surrounded by pallets of medical supplies, the drone of engines filling her skull with white noise that matched the static in her thoughts. She'd left Fort Bragg under cover of darkness, driven to Pope Field by a sergeant who'd asked no questions, and accepted her thanks with a nod that said he knew better than to wonder why a captain was catching a logistics flight in civilian clothes. Harding had been true to his word. Her name appeared on the manifest as a medical liaison officer. Her duffel bag, which contained enough weapons and tactical gear to outfit a small raid team, had been marked as personal effects and waved through without inspection. 48 hours. That's all the head start she had before people started asking questions Harding couldn't answer. She tried to sleep, couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Danny's face in that video, vacant, empty, a puppet waiting for someone to pull the strings. The implant in her own skull ached. Phantom pain, probably. The chip had been dormant for 5 years, its malfunction leaving her with nothing but scar tissue and the occasional headache when storms rolled in. But now, thinking about what they'd done to Danny, she felt it differently. Felt the weight of the technology embedded in her brain. The violation of having someone else's invention grafted into her consciousness. She wondered if Danny could feel his implant, if he knew when Volkov activated the neural override, if he was aware, trapped inside his own body while the AI piloted him through tasks his mind screamed against. The thought made her want to put her fist through the cargo bay wall. They landed in Amman at dawn. The heat hit like a physical force when the cargo ramp lowered. Eva grabbed her duffel and made her way through the chaos of the military airfield, flashing her fake credentials at checkpoints staffed by Marines too tired to care about one more logistics officer passing through. She'd arranged transportation before leaving Bragg, an old contact from her signals intelligence days, now working private security in the Middle East. He met her outside the base in a dust-covered Toyota pickup that looked like it had survived multiple wars. "Mercer," he said by way of greeting, "heard you were dead." "I got better." He didn't ask questions, just drove. They headed north through landscapes that could have been the moon if the moon had been beige and dotted with the occasional goat. After 2 hours, they crossed into Syria using routes that weren't on any map and checkpoints that belonged to whoever had the most guns that week. Her contact dropped her at a village 10 miles from the facility's coordinates. "You want backup?" he asked. "No." "Extraction." "I'll find my own way out." He looked at her like she was crazy but handed over a satellite phone. "Call if you change your mind, or if you need someone to identify the body." She took the phone, watched him drive away in a plume of dust. Then she started walking. The desert swallowed her. Heat and silence and the kind of emptiness that made you understand why ancient peoples had imagined gods in places like this. She walked for 4 hours, following GPS coordinates on a handheld unit, moving through wadis and around rock formations that provided the only shade for miles. By late afternoon, she could see the facility. It sat in a depression between two ridgelines, partially buried in sand like something trying to hide. Chain-link fencing surrounded the perimeter, guard towers at each corner, a single access road that wound through the desert like a scar. Eva found a position on the northern ridge, set up her rifle, a Remington 700 she'd acquired in Amman, not as powerful as a Barrett but sufficient for ranges under 1,000 meters. She settled in behind the scope and began to observe. Guard rotation every 4 hours, 6 men visible at any given time, 2 in the towers, 2 patrolling the perimeter, 2 at the main entrance. Light security for a black site, which meant either Volkov was confident nobody would find him or he wanted to appear vulnerable. Trap, Eva thought, has to be. She watched until nightfall. The facility lit up like a beacon once the sun dropped, floodlights on the towers, interior lights visible through narrow windows. A generator hummed somewhere, feeding power to whatever systems Volkov was running underground. At 2200 hours, a vehicle approached, black SUV with tinted windows. It stopped at the main gate. The guard snapped to attention, the kind of attention that said whoever was in that vehicle outranked everyone else on site. The SUV drove inside, parked near the main entrance. 4 men got out. Even at this distance, Eva could see they moved like military, tactical gear under civilian jackets, weapons carried with the casual competence of people who used them professionally. The 5th person to exit the vehicle was different, older, gray-haired, moving with the stiff dignity of someone whose body was betraying the authority their mind still commanded. Eva adjusted her scope, zoomed in on the man's face. Major General Richard Voss. The name clicked into place now. She'd seen him once, years ago, during a Pentagon briefing on advanced weapons systems. He'd been the officer asking questions about neural integration, about override protocols, about whether soldiers could be programmed to follow orders even in situations where their judgment said otherwise. He'd been the one pushing Project Prometheus forward. And now he was here, in Syria, at the same facility where Volkov was holding Danny. Eva's finger brushed the trigger. The math was simple: 740 meters, minimal wind, stationary target. She could drop Voss before his security team even registered the shot. But killing him wouldn't save Danny, wouldn't shut down whatever operation was running in that facility, would just eliminate one player while leaving the game intact. She lifted her finger, kept watching. Voss disappeared inside. The guards returned to their posts. The night settled into routine. Eva waited until 0300, the dead hour when human attention drifted, and even disciplined sentries started thinking about coffee and the end of their shift. She broke down her rifle, secured it in her pack, and began her approach. The fence was standard chain link with concertina wire on top. No sensors that she could detect. She cut through with bolt cutters in less than 30 seconds, slipped through the gap, moved toward the main building. The exterior was concrete reinforced with steel, windows too narrow for entry, a single door on the north side, metal, locked electronically. Eva placed a small charge against the lock mechanism, shaped explosive, just enough to fry the electronics without alerting every guard on site. The charge went off with a muffled crack. The door clicked open. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered against tile floors, the smell of disinfectant and ozone. Eva moved through corridors that felt more like a hospital than a military installation, examining rooms, medical equipment, computers displaying readouts she didn't understand. She found stairs leading down, descended 3 levels. The air got colder. The walls changed from tile to raw concrete. She was underground now, in the part of the facility that didn't appear in any blueprints. At the bottom of the stairs, a corridor stretched into darkness, doors on either side, all locked, all marked with numbers instead of names. Eva moved door to door, checking each one. Empty rooms, storage, equipment. Then she reached door 17. The lock was different here. Biometric scanner, reinforced frame, the kind of security you used when you wanted to make sure whatever was inside stayed inside. She placed another charge, this one larger. The explosion echoed through the corridor like thunder. The door blew inward. Eva rushed through, weapon up, ready for resistance. The room was 15 feet square, concrete walls, a single chair in the center bolted to the floor, and sitting in that chair, wires running from his head to machines against the wall, was Danny. He looked up as she entered. His eyes were Danny's eyes, but the expression in them was wrong, too calm, too empty. "Eva," he said. His voice was flat, mechanical. "You came." She moved toward him, stopped. Something felt wrong. The way he sat too still. The way his gaze tracked her with the precision of a targeting camera. "Danny, it's me. We're getting out of here." No, he didn't move. "You're not." The lights in the room changed. Red, emergency lighting, and from speakers hidden in the ceiling, a voice she recognized. "Volkov." "Captain Mercer, welcome. I've been expecting you." Eva spun, weapon raised, but there was no one to shoot. Just speakers and cameras and Danny sitting in that chair with wires in his skull. "I'm sorry it had to be this way," Volkov continued, "but you need to understand what we're dealing with, what your brother has become." "Let him go." "I can't. The neural override is integrated too deeply. Removing it would kill him. Shutting it down would leave him brain damaged. There's no extraction, no cure. There's only control." Eva's hands shook. "You did this to him." "I refined what the Pentagon started, what they wanted, a soldier who never questions, never hesitates, never refuses." A pause. "Would you like to see a demonstration?" Before Eva could respond, Danny stood. The movement was fluid, impossibly fast. One moment sitting, the next on his feet, covering the distance between them in 3 strides. His hand locked around her wrist, squeezed. The pressure was precise, calculated to cause pain without breaking bone. Eva tried to pull away. Couldn't. Danny was strong, but this was something else. strength guided by artificial intelligence that knew exactly how much force to apply and where. "Let her see," Volkov said through the speakers. "Let her understand." Danny's other hand moved to her throat, not squeezing, just resting there, a reminder of how quickly he could kill her if the AI decided it was necessary. Eva looked into her brother's eyes, saw recognition flickering behind the emptiness, saw Danny in there, trapped, screaming, unable to stop his own body from hurting her. "Please," she whispered, "fight it." "He can't," Volkov again. "The override is absolute. His conscious mind is aware, can see everything, feel everything. But the motor functions belong to the AI now. He's a passenger in his own body." Danny's hand tightened slightly on her throat. Eva felt her air supply constrict, not enough to choke her, just enough to make the point. Then he let go, stepped back, returned to the chair like a machine powering down. Eva gasped, touched her throat where his fingers had left marks. "Now you understand," Volkov said. "This is what they want. What Voss has been trying to create for 10 years. Soldiers who can be controlled remotely, who will do anything, kill anyone, without question or hesitation or conscience." "Then destroy it," Eva said. "Delete the programming, shut it down." "I can't. The technology exists. The proof of concept is walking around in your brother's skull. Even if I destroyed every file, every backup, as long as Danny lives, the neural override can be studied and replicated." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Eva's voice went cold. "You want me to kill him?" "I want you to understand the choice. Your brother is gone. What's left is a weapon that will be used by people like Voss to do terrible things. You can save him by ending it, or you can let him exist like this, knowing what he'll be forced to do. That's not a choice, that's murder. That's war." The door behind Eva exploded inward, not from a shaped charge, from breaching rounds fired by operators who knew how to clear a room. She spun, bringing her weapon up, but they were already inside. 4 of them, tactical gear, rifles with mounted lights that turned the room into noon. "Drop it," one of them shouted. Eva's finger touched the trigger. Math ran through her head. 4 targets, confined space. She might drop 2 before they returned fire. Might. Then Danny moved. He was behind her in an instant, arm around her throat, her own pistol pressed against her temple. The AI had calculated the situation faster than human thought and positioned Danny as a human shield. "Don't shoot," Danny's voice said, but it wasn't Danny speaking. It was the AI using his vocal cords. "Asset 14 has secured the target." The operators lowered their weapons fractionally. Confused, they'd come to extract Eva, hadn't expected resistance from the prisoner they were supposed to be rescuing. Footsteps in the corridor, slow, measured. Major General Voss walked into the room like he was inspecting a training exercise. He looked at Eva, looked at Danny, smiled. "Captain Mercer," he said, "thank you for making this so much easier." Eva tried to speak. Danny's arm tightened, cutting off her air. Voss turned to his operators. "Restrain her, carefully. The implant in her skull is valuable." They moved forward. Eva struggled, but Danny's grip was iron. She felt plastic zip ties bite into her wrists, felt hands patting her down, removing her weapons, her phone, her gear. Voss watched it all with the detached interest of a scientist observing an experiment. When she was secured, Danny released her, stepped back to his chair, sat down like nothing had happened. "The neural override is remarkable, isn't it?" Voss said. 5 years ago it was unstable, prone to failure, but Dr. Volkov has perfected it. Your brother is proof, fully functional, completely obedient, the ideal soldier." "He's a slave," Eva spat. He's a tool like a rifle or a drone, and just as moral. Voss walked closer. You should understand this, Captain. You volunteered for Ghost Unit, accepted the implant. You knew the risks. We volunteered to be enhanced, not controlled. Enhancement and control are the same thing. We enhance soldiers so they'll be more effective at following orders. The neural override just makes that relationship explicit. Eva lunged. The operators grabbed her, slammed her back against the wall. Voss didn't flinch. You have a choice, he said. Submit to the upgrade procedure. Let us bring your implant online with the new protocols. Become what your brother is, a perfect soldier. Lord. Or we extract the implant surgically. The procedure has a 90% fatality rate, but at least we'll have the hardware for study. He checked his watch. You have 10 seconds to decide. Eva looked at Danny. Her brother sat motionless, staring at nothing, breathing, existing, but not living. 5 seconds. She thought about the years since Ghost Unit, about building a life from nothing, about trying to be normal when normal had been stolen from her in an operating room 5 years ago. 3 seconds. She thought about Harding, about the choice he'd made to help her, about whether any of this mattered if she ended up a puppet like Danny. Time's up, Voss said. One of the operators pulled out a syringe, but before he could inject her, Eva spoke. Her voice was steady, calm, the voice of someone who'd made a decision. Wait. Voss raised his hand. The operator paused. Eva met Voss's eyes. I need to know one thing first. The sedative you're about to use, military grade, fast acting, designed to drop someone in under 10 seconds. Voss frowned. What does that matter? Because I've been building tolerance to it for 7 years. Eva's expression didn't change. Standard operating procedure for Black Ops. You rotate through different sedatives, micro doses, build up resistance. By the time you're operational, it takes 3 times the normal dose to put you under. She saw the realization hit Voss's face a split second before she moved. The operator had lowered his guard, needle still in hand. Eva twisted, using the zip ties as leverage to spin the man between her and the others. Her hands came up, still bound, and caught his wrist, redirected the needle into his own neck, pressed the plunger. He dropped. The tolerance training had been part of Ghost Unit's survival curriculum. Weekly injections of progressively stronger doses of common sedatives, ketamine, propofol, benzodiazepines. The goal was to stay conscious long enough in a capture scenario to either escape or die trying. Eva had hated those sessions. The nausea, the disorientation, the way her instructors would time how long she stayed awake, pushing the dosage higher each week until her body adapted. Now it might save her life. The other 3 operators reacted, but they were in a confined space with limited firing angles. Eva used the falling man as a shield, grabbed his sidearm from his holster, fired twice. Both shots hit tactical vests. The operators staggered back. Danny moved again, but this time something was different. His movements weren't fluid. They stuttered, like a video buffering. Eva saw it in his eyes. Confusion, pain, the AI trying to execute commands while something fought back. She didn't have time to process it. Voss was drawing his own weapon. She dove left, fired blind, heard him curse as the round sparked off concrete near his head. Then the lights cut out completely. Emergency power failed. The facility dropped into absolute darkness. And in that darkness, Volkov's voice came through the speakers one more time. Forgive me, Eva, this was the only way. Somewhere in the facility, in systems Eva couldn't see, code began to execute. The virus Volkov had been writing for 5 years, the one designed to corrupt the neural override, to give Danny back his body, or kill him trying. The generators kicked back in, red emergency lighting. Eva could see Danny convulsing in the chair, the restraints keeping him from falling. Blood vessels burst in his eyes, foam at his mouth. The AI was dying, taking Danny with it. Eva screamed his name, started toward him. Voss grabbed her from behind, they struggled. The weapon fell. They went down together in a tangle of limbs. She got her bound hands around his throat, squeezed. Voss's face went purple. His hands clawed at hers, but she had leverage and rage and 7 years of hand-to-hand combat training. The operators were recovering, moving toward them. She had seconds. Then Danny's eyes opened. No longer vacant, no longer controlled. Just a young man coming back from somewhere terrible, carrying the weight of everything he'd been forced to do. Eva. His voice was his own. She let go of Voss, scrambled to Danny, started working at his restraints. "Can you move?" she asked. "I think," he tried to stand, collapsed. "Everything hurts." "That's good. That means you're human again." Behind them, Voss was getting to his feet. The operators had their rifles up. They were out of options. Then the far wall exploded. Not a breach, a demolition. Someone had placed charges on the exterior and blown through 6 feet of reinforced concrete. Through the smoke and dust, a figure stepped into the room, rifle up, moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent a lifetime in war zones. Colonel Jack Harding. "Sorry I'm late," he said. "Traffic was hell." He'd made the decision somewhere over the Atlantic, sitting in the cargo hold of a transport plane headed for Germany on official business, knowing that Eva was walking into Syria alone, knowing that he could stop her or help her, but doing nothing wasn't an option anymore. He'd diverted to Jordan, used every favor he'd accumulated in 30 years of service, called in debts from operators who owed him, acquired weapons from sources that would have ended his career if anyone found out. Then he'd followed Eva's trail into Syria, 6 hours behind but moving faster because he wasn't trying to be subtle. By the time he reached the facility, it was in chaos, alarms, generators failing. He'd planted charges on what looked like a cell block and blown his way in. Now he stood in a room with 4 hostile operators, a general who'd gone rogue, and 2 soldiers with technology in their heads that was worth killing for. The math was simple. Get them out or die trying. "Eva," he said, not taking his eyes off the operators, "can Danny walk?" "With help." "Then help him, we're leaving." Voss laughed, actually laughed. "You think you can fight your way out of here, Harding? This facility has 20 operators, you're one man." "I'm one very angry man with a rifle and nothing left to lose." Harding's finger touched the trigger. "That tends to even the odds." The standoff held for 3 seconds. Then Danny stood. Still shaky, still weak, but standing on his own. He looked at the operators, at Voss, at the machines that had controlled him. And he smiled. "Asset 14, he said, his voice hoarse but human, "is offline." That's when the building started to come down. Volkov's final gift. He triggered a cascade failure in the facility's structural supports. The place had been designed to be destroyed if compromised. Now those failsafes were activating. Concrete cracked, steel groaned, dust rained from the ceiling. "Move," Harding shouted. They ran, Eva supporting Danny, Harding covering their retreat. Behind them, the operators had to choose between pursuit and survival. Most chose survival. Voss didn't. He came after them, weapon drawn, screaming about the technology, about the research, about everything he was losing. Harding turned at the base of the stairs, put a round through Voss's knee. The general went down hard. "That's for every soldier you turned into a lab rat," Harding said. They climbed. The building shook with each step. By the time they reached ground level, sections of the facility were collapsing into the underground levels. They made it outside as the main building imploded. Dust and debris fountained into the night sky. The towers toppled. The fences fell. In 5 minutes, the facility that had housed Project Prometheus's darkest experiments was reduced to a crater in the desert. Eva, Danny, and Harding stood at a safe distance, watching it burn. "Volkov?" Eva asked. "Still inside," Harding said. He triggered it, knew he couldn't escape, made sure the technology went with him. Danny touched the scar behind his ear. "The override, it's gone, I can feel it, the silence." "You're free," Eva said. "We all are." Harding looked at the ruins. The files, the backups, the proof of concept, all gone. Weiss is crippled. His operators scattered. It's over. But as they walked away into the desert, toward extraction and new lives and the long road to whatever came next, Danny spoke quietly. "You know there'll be others, right? Other programs, other scientists. The idea doesn't die just because we burned one facility." Eva nodded. "I know." "So what do we do?" She looked at her brother, at Harding, at two people who'd chosen to fight when fighting was all they had left. "We stay ready," she said, "and when they try again, we burn them again." They disappeared into the night. Behind them, the last flames of Project Prometheus flickered and died. But ghosts never really stay buried. And the war for what it meant to be human was just beginning. The virus spread through Danny Mercer's neural pathways like fire through dry timber. In the control room 3 floors above, Dr. Isaac Volkov watched the biometric displays fracture into chaos. Heart rate spiking, brain activity oscillating between normal and catastrophic. The AI fighting back against the code meant to destroy it. Danny's body convulsed in the chair. The restraints held, but the metal groaned. Blood vessels burst in his eyes, turning the whites red. Foam appeared at the corners of his mouth. Every muscle locked rigid as two systems warred for control of the same meat. Volkov's hands moved across the keyboard, trying to moderate the virus's aggression. Too fast and it would burn out Danny's brain. Too slow and the AI would adapt, rebuild, survive. He was threading a needle while riding a bull. The alarms brought guards running. Volkov could hear boots pounding through corridors, voices shouting. In 60 seconds they'd breach the control room and he'd have to explain why the facility's most valuable asset was seizing to death. He typed faster. On the monitors, Danny's vitals began to stabilize. The oscillations smoothed. Brain activity settled into patterns that looked almost normal, almost human. Then Danny's eyes opened. No longer vacant, no longer controlled. Just a young man coming back from somewhere terrible, carrying the weight of everything he'd been forced to do while the AI wore his body like a suit. "Danny," Volkov spoke into the microphone, "can you hear me?" Danny's head turned toward the camera, slow, deliberate, his own movement, not the AI's fluid precision. He nodded once. "Can you move on your own?" Danny lifted his right hand, flexed his fingers. The gesture was shaky but unmistakably voluntary. His face crumpled, relief or horror or both. The door to the control room exploded inward. Voss's operators flooded in, weapons raised. Volkov stood slowly, hands visible, the gesture of a man who knew fighting would only get him killed faster. "What did you do?" The lead operator grabbed Volkov by the collar, slammed him against the wall. "The asset is offline. What did you do?" Before Volkov could answer, Major General Voss walked in. He took one look at the monitors showing Danny's freed consciousness, at Volkov's defiant expression, and his face went cold. "You sabotaged the override," Voss said. "Not a question. A statement of fact delivered with the flat certainty of a death sentence. I fixed what should never have been broken." Voss nodded to his operator. The man's fist caught Volkov in the stomach, doubling him over. When Volkov straightened, blood leaked from the corner of his mouth. "Restrain him," Voss ordered, "and shut down whatever program he initiated. I want the override back online in 30 minutes. "You can't," Volkov smiled through broken teeth. "The virus is self-replicating. It's already corrupted the core systems. Even if you kill me, even if you rebuild from backups, it'll take months to purge." "Then we have months." "You have minutes," Volkov gestured at the monitors. "I also initiated a facility-wide data purge. Every file, every backup, every piece of research. In 28 minutes it all gets encrypted with a key only I know, and I'm not telling you what it is." Voss's hand moved to his sidearm, drew it, pressed the muzzle against Volkov's forehead. "Last chance, the encryption key." Volkov met his eyes. "No." The gunshot never came, because at that moment every light in the facility cut out. Emergency power kicked in half a second later, bathing everything in red. And from somewhere deep in the building came an explosion that shook dust from the ceiling. Voss spun toward his operators. "Report." One of them had a radio pressed to his ear. "South perimeter breach. Multiple hostiles. Wait," he listened. "Sir, they're saying it's one hostile, single shooter. She's taken out 4 guards and blown the generator building." Voss's expression went from anger to calculation in an instant. "Mercer's awake." 3 floors down, in a surgical prep room lit only by emergency lights, Eva Mercer finished zip-tying the unconscious surgeon to his own operating table. The sedative they'd given her was supposed to keep her under for hours. They hadn't counted on the fact that she'd been building tolerance to military-grade tranquilizers since she was 25. The training had started in Ghost Unit's 2nd year of operations. Weekly sessions in a medical bay at Fort Bragg. Small doses of ketamine at first, then propofol, then combinations designed to drop a soldier instantly. The instructors would inject her, time how long she stayed conscious, adjust the dosage up. By the end, Eva could take 3 times the normal dose and still function for 15 minutes. Long enough to escape restraints, long enough to fight, long enough to survive. The training had been brutal. She'd spent months feeling nauseous, disoriented, like her body was betraying her. But the instructors had been clear. Capture meant interrogation. Interrogation meant drugs. If you couldn't resist sedation, you were as good as dead. She'd hated every session. But now, waking up on this table with a scalpel hovering over her skull, she thanked whatever instinct had made her stay conscious through those training cycles. She'd woken strapped to a table with a doctor preparing to cut into her skull. Had waited until his back was turned. Then she'd slipped the plastic restraints using a trick learned from a seer instructor who'd been captured in Iraq, grabbed the scalpel he'd laid out for the procedure, and introduced him to unconsciousness via a precisely applied chokehold. Now she moved through corridors filling with the sound of boots and shouted orders. She'd taken the surgeon's access card, his pistol, a radio she kept on just to monitor their communications. The explosion she'd set in the generator building had been improvised. Oxygen tanks from the medical supply room, plus a timing device made from a watch and some wire. Crude but effective. The facility was running on backup power now, and backup power meant limited camera coverage. She moved through the blind spots like a ghost. Her objective was simple: find Danny, get out, burn this place to bedrock on the way. The details would work themselves out. They always did when your options narrowed to violence or death. She found stairs leading down, descended toward the detention level where Volkov had kept Danny. The corridors here were older, rougher. This was the original CIA black site, back when enhanced interrogation meant something that left scars. Cell 17. The door was still blown open from her earlier entry. She went in fast, weapon up. Danny stood in the center of the room, no longer strapped to the chair, no longer vacant. He turned when she entered, and for a moment they just stared at each other across 5 years of lies and classified files and a government that had tried to turn them both into weapons. "Eva," his voice cracked, "it's really you." She crossed the room in 3 steps, wrapped him in a hug that was half relief and half confirmation that he was solid, real here. Danny hugged back and she felt him shaking. "I thought I'd never," he couldn't finish, just held on like a drowning man clutching driftwood. "How are you free?" Eva pulled back enough to see his face. "The override. Volkov said it couldn't be shut down." He lied, or maybe he found a way. Danny touched the scar behind his ear where the implant sat. "I can feel it still there, but it's quiet, like white noise got turned off and I can finally hear my own thoughts again." "Can you walk, fight if we need to?" "I've been doing both, just not by choice." Bitter. "Yeah, I can manage." Eva handed him the pistol she'd taken from the surgeon. "Then, let's get out of here." They made it halfway to the stairs before the operators found them. 6 men in tactical gear, rifles raised, moving with the coordinated precision of people who'd done this 1,000 times. The corridor was too narrow for Eva and Danny to take cover, too long to rush without getting cut down. The lead operator's voice came calm and professional. "Captain Mercer, Sergeant Mercer, you're ordered to stand down and return to detention." Eva's hand moved toward her empty holster before she remembered. She'd given Danny her only weapon. Danny raised the pistol, but 6 rifles against 1 handgun was math even desperation couldn't fix. "Last warning," the operator said. Then the lights cut out completely. Not emergency power failure. Someone had killed it deliberately. The corridor dropped into absolute darkness, broken only by the weapon-mounted lights on the operator's rifles. Eva moved on instinct, dropped low, rolled left, heard Danny do the same. The operator's lights swung wild, searching. From the darkness came a voice amplified by speakers hidden in the ceiling. "Volkov. Gentlemen, you're about to experience what true neural override looks like." One of the operators started to scream. Not pain, not fear, confusion. His weapon clattered to the floor. His hands went to his head, clawing at something invisible. "What is this?" Another operator spun, light cutting through the dark. "What's happening?" "The neural override was designed to control," Volkov's voice echoed. "But it can also transmit. I've been broadcasting a modified signal through the facility's wireless network for the last 90 seconds. Your communication earpieces are receiving it, and your brains are very, very suggestible." 2 more operators dropped. One fired his rifle into the ceiling, full auto, emptying the magazine before collapsing. The last 3 tried to run, but their legs stopped working. They fell like puppets with cut strings. The lights came back on. Eva and Danny stood among 6 unconscious operators who were breathing but unresponsive. Eva looked up at the nearest camera. "Volkov. You're welcome." His voice came through the speakers, strained but alive. "I can't hold Voss's people much longer. The signal I'm using is burning out the facility's transmitters. You have maybe 10 minutes before they reboot and he regains control. Where are you? Control room, 3rd floor, but don't come for me. Get your brother out, that's what matters. Danny stepped forward. Doc, we're not leaving you. You have to. I've initiated a data purge. Everything related to the neural override, every file, every backup. In 8 minutes it encrypts with a key only I know. Voss will kill me for it, but the technology dies with me. Then give us the key, Eva said. We take you with us and you can decrypt it later, destroy it properly. Silence on the other end, long enough that Eva knew the answer before Volkov spoke. There is no key. The encryption is unbreakable, even by me. A pause. I'm 63 years old, Captain. I've spent the last 5 years running, hiding, watching over my shoulder, knowing that as long as I lived, people would hunt me for what I know, for what I built. So this is suicide. This is making amends. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Voss's voice barked orders. More operators coming, a lot of them. Go, Volkov said. North exit service tunnel. It leads half a mile into the desert. I've unlocked it remotely. Eva grabbed Danny's arm, started moving, stopped, looked back at the camera. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm the one who built the cage. I'm just trying to break it before anyone else gets locked inside. Volkov's voice softened. Tell your brother I'm sorry for all of it. They ran. Behind them, the sound of boots on stairs. Shouts. The operators recovering from whatever Volkov had done to them. Eva and Danny sprinted through corridors that twisted like intestines, following emergency signs toward the north exit. They burst through a door marked service tunnel, authorized personnel only. Inside, a concrete passage sloped upward into darkness. Pipes ran along the ceiling. The air smelled like rust and stagnant water. They ran. In the control room, Volkov sat surrounded by 4 operators with rifles trained on his head. Voss stood before the main terminal, watching the data purge countdown. 7 minutes. 6. 5. Stop it, Voss ordered. Can't, it's automated. Even if I wanted to, which I don't, the process is locked. Voss turned. His face was calm, but his eyes held the kind of rage that came from watching something valuable slip away. You've destroyed 5 years of research, millions of dollars in development, technology that could have changed warfare forever. Technology that would have turned soldiers into slaves. Volkov met his gaze. I know what I've done, do you? I've advanced human capability beyond natural limits. You've built a remote control for human beings, and you're angry because I broke it before you could use it. Volkov smiled. Blood from his earlier beating stained his teeth. That makes me the good guy. Strange feeling after all these years. Voss drew his sidearm. You think you're a hero. I think I'm a scientist who finally remembered what his work was supposed to be for. Volkov glanced at the countdown. 4 minutes. And I think in 4 minutes, the neural override stops existing outside of theoretical papers and nightmare scenarios. There are backups off-site, cloud storage. Encrypted with the same key, unbreakable. Voss's finger moved to the trigger. Then you're no longer useful. The gunshot was loud in the small room, but it didn't come from Voss's weapon. One of the operators collapsed, then another. The remaining 2 spun toward the door as it burst open. Colonel Jack Harding stood in the doorway, rifle smoking, looking like a man who traveled a long way to do something necessary. He'd made the decision somewhere over the Atlantic. Sitting in a military transport headed for a meeting in Germany he had no intention of attending. The official orders in his pocket said he was consulting on training protocols at Ramstein Air Base, but his duffel bag held weapons and tactical gear that had nothing to do with consulting. He diverted the flight to Jordan, told the pilot it was classified business, used the kind of voice that made junior officers stop asking questions, landed at the same airfield where Eva had arrived 2 days earlier. Then he'd done what 30 years of special operations experience had taught him. He'd called in every favor he had. A former SEAL in Amman who owed him for a recommendation letter. A CIA contractor in Damascus who remembered when Harding had pulled him out of a firefight in Fallujah. A logistics sergeant at Enfab near the Syrian border who'd served under Harding in Iraq and would walk through fire for the old man. He'd assembled a kit: Barrett M107 sniper rifle, night vision, explosives, everything needed for a one-man infiltration of a black site facility in hostile territory. The journey had taken him through the same desert Eva had crossed, but Harding moved faster because he wasn't trying to be subtle. He'd driven straight up to the facility perimeter in a contractor vehicle, flashed credentials that identified him as a Pentagon inspector on a surprise audit, and when the guards had hesitated, he'd shot them. Then he'd blown the north wall with shaped charges and fought his way inside. Now he stood in Volkov's control room with 2 dead operators at his feet, his rifle pointed at Voss, and the calm certainty of a man who'd already made peace with whatever came next. General Voss, Harding said. The title carried the weight of 30 years of service, recognizing that rank didn't mean righteousness. Stand down. Voss didn't lower his weapon. Colonel Harding, you're out of your jurisdiction, and your mind. Probably, but I'm also the guy with a rifle pointed at you while your operators are bleeding on the floor. Harding stepped closer. So I'm going to give you one chance. Walk away. Disappear into whatever hole the Pentagon keeps for officers who cross too many lines, because if you don't, I will put you in the ground and sleep fine about it. You'll be court-martialed. I'll be 62 years old with a clear conscience. I can live with that trade. For a long moment the 2 men stared at each other, warrior recognizing warrior even across the line of what was legal versus what was right. Then Voss lowered his weapon. This isn't over, he said. Yeah, it is. Harding gestured with his rifle. Now get out before I change my mind about that clear conscience thing. Voss left. The remaining operators followed. Their boots echoed down the corridor and faded into the distance. Harding turned to Volkov. You okay, Doc? Define okay. Volkov gestured at the countdown. 2 minutes. I've just burned the last 5 years of my life. Guaranteed that Voss will have me hunted for the rest of my days, however long that is. And I'm probably going to bleed out from internal injuries before we make it out of this facility. So Tuesday. Volkov laughed, coughed, spat blood. Help me up. Harding got him to his feet. Together they moved toward the door. The countdown hit 60 seconds. On the monitors, files began encrypting in cascading waves. Project Prometheus, Neural Override, Ghost Unit, every piece of data that documented how to turn human beings into remote-controlled weapons. All of it locking behind mathematics that would take quantum computers 1,000 years to break. At 0, the screens went dark. It's done, Volkov said. They made it 3 steps before the explosion hit. Not in the control room. Somewhere below, the facility shook, ceiling tiles fell, pipes burst, flooding corridors with water that mixed with the emergency lighting to create a red-tinged nightmare. What the hell was that? Harding grabbed Volkov to keep him upright. Voss, Volkov's voice was weak. He's destroying the facility. If he can't have the technology, he'll make sure nobody can study the ruins. Can we make it out? Not the way you came in. They ran anyway, or tried to. Volkov's injuries slowed them. Harding half-carried the older man through corridors that were coming apart. More explosions. The building was eating itself from the inside. They reached the North Service tunnel, found it collapsed, 20 tons of concrete blocking the exit. There's another way, Volkov gasped. Ventilation shaft, old CIA design, emergency escape, but it's tight. I don't think I can make it. Then I'll make you make it. They found the shaft behind a false panel in what used to be an interrogation room. Square opening, 2 feet by 2 feet, climbing up into darkness. A ladder built into the wall. The kind of escape route that assumed you were desperate enough to risk broken bones over capture. Harding went first, hauled himself up, called down for Volkov. The old scientist tried, made it 10 feet before his strength gave out. He hung there, gasping, blood running down his chin. Can't, he wheezed, leave me. Not a chance. Harding climbed back down, got beneath Volkov, pushed while Volkov pulled. Inch by agonizing inch they climbed. Behind them the facility groaned. Steel warped. Concrete cracked. The building was coming down. They made it halfway when the ladder gave out. Old metal, corroded by decades of desert moisture. It snapped with a sound like a gunshot. They fell. 30 feet, landed hard on concrete that had no give. Harding felt ribs crack. Volkov hit worse. Didn't move after impact. Harding crawled over. Doc, stay with me. Volkov's eyes opened, barely. Get out, building's coming down. Not without you. Too late, Volkov coughed, more blood. Listen, the encryption key, I lied. What? There is a key, not in any system, in my head, a phrase I memorized. He grabbed Harding's collar, pulled him close, whispered 13 words. Harding repeated them back. Good, Volkov let go, settled back. Now burn it, all of it, make sure it's gone. I will. And tell Eva. Tell her I'm sorry I couldn't fix her implant too, but at least Danny's free. You did good, Doc. Volkov smiled, finally. He closed his eyes. The building shook again. Harder, the ceiling split. Harding looked up, saw daylight through the crack, 20 feet above, might as well have been miles. He grabbed Volkov's body, started dragging him toward the light. Half a mile away, at the end of the service tunnel where it opened into the desert, Eva and Danny emerged into morning sun that felt like freedom. They'd run the whole way, Danny stumbling but keeping up, both of them driven by the knowledge that behind them everything was ending in fire. They made it 50 yards before the facility imploded. Not an explosion, a controlled demolition. Voss had wired the whole structure. When the charges went off, the building folded in on itself like a house of cards. Dust billowed into the sky in a mushroom cloud that would be visible for miles. Eva and Danny hit the ground, covered their heads, waited for the shock wave to pass. When the dust settled, the facility was gone. Just a crater in the desert where a black site used to hide its secrets. Harding was in there, Eva said, and Volkov. Danny touched her shoulder, pointed. 2 figures were climbing out of the rubble, one supporting the other. As they got closer, Eva could see it was Harding, covered in dust and blood, carrying something wrapped in torn fabric. She ran to meet him, Colonel. Harding set down what he was carrying, Volkov's body. The old scientist hadn't made it, but Harding had brought him out anyway because leaving people behind wasn't something you did if you could help it. He gave me the encryption key, Harding said. His voice was rough from dust and smoke. Before he died, said to make sure the technology burns. It already did, Eva said. The facility's gone. Not the facility, the knowledge. Harding tapped his head. It's in here now. Everything Volkov knew about building the neural override. The encryption key to unlock all the research if anyone ever finds the off-site backups. Then we destroy it. How? I can't just forget it. The information exists as long as I'm alive. Danny spoke up. Then we make sure nobody knows you have it. We disappear, all of us. New identities, new lives. As far as the Pentagon knows, we all died in that collapse. Eva looked at her brother. You want to run for the rest of your life. I want to live, really live, without someone's hand on my strings. He touched his head. Volkov freed me, but I'm only free if they think I'm dead. Same as you, same as Colonel Harding. Harding looked at the crater, at Volkov's body, at the 2 soldiers he'd followed into Syria because doing nothing had stopped being an option. I've got 2 years until retirement, he said. I was going to spend them in Tennessee, small house, maybe do some fishing. Still can, Eva said, just under a different name. And the encryption key, the knowledge in my head. Take it to the grave. Danny knelt beside Volkov, closed the old man's eyes. That's what he would have wanted. The technology dies, really dies, not just hidden, gone. They stood in the desert as the sun climbed higher. 3 soldiers who'd been declared dead by a government that needed them to be. 3 people choosing to stay ghosts rather than go back to a system that had turned them into experiments. We need to move, Harding said. Voss will have people coming, satellites overhead. We've got maybe an hour before this whole area swarms with operators. They walked, left Volkov where he lay because trying to carry his body through the desert would kill them all. Eva said a few words. Danny saluted. Harding stood at attention for a long moment before turning away. It wasn't much of a funeral, but it was what they had. 3 days later, Eva Mercer sat in a cafe in Amman, Jordan, drinking coffee and reading a newspaper article about an unidentified explosion at a suspected terrorist facility in eastern Syria. Coalition forces were investigating. No survivors had been found. Danny sat across from her. His hair was different, shorter, dyed black. Colored contacts turned his eyes brown. He'd shaved the beard. In 3 days he'd aged backward, looking more like the kid sister remembered from before Ghost Unit than the hollow puppet Volkov had kept in that cell. You think they'll buy it, he asked, that we're dead? They want to buy it. Loose ends are expensive. Easier to write us off as casualties than explain what really happened. Eva folded the newspaper. How are you feeling? Free, he said it like he was testing the word, seeing if it fit. Scared, angry, but free. The implant. Still there, but quiet. Like Volkov said, the virus he used didn't destroy it, just put it to sleep. Danny touched the scar behind his ear. You ever wonder if yours could wake up? If someone built another neural override and figured out how to activate your chip? Every day. Doesn't that terrify you? Less than going back. Eva finished her coffee. We've got new passports, new identities, money from accounts Harding set up. We can go anywhere, be anyone. Except who we were. Who we were got us turned into lab experiments. I can live without that version of myself. Danny nodded, looked out the window at the streets of Amman. Normal people living normal lives. The kind of normal that didn't include classified implants and government conspiracies and brothers forced to hurt sisters because artificial intelligence wore their body like a suit. Where do we go? He asked. Somewhere quiet, somewhere nobody's looking for ghosts. Colonel Jack Harding never made it to Tennessee. Instead, he ended up in Montana under the name Jack Morrison, running a small gun shop in a town too far from anywhere to show up on maps that mattered. He taught shooting classes to hunters, fixed rifles for locals, lived alone in a cabin that had more books than furniture. At night, he'd sit on his porch and watch the stars and think about the encryption key locked in his memory. 13 words that could unlock every piece of research on the neural override if anyone ever found the backups. He'd considered writing them down once, sealing them in a safe deposit box with instructions to destroy upon his death. But written words could be found, stolen, decrypted. The safest vault was the one that died with you. So he kept the knowledge locked away and waited for old age or accident, or whatever fate had in store for a 62-year-old man who'd chosen conscience over career. Most days he felt good about that choice. 6 months after Syria, Eva and Danny were living in a small town in Oregon under the names Sarah and David Miller. Eva worked as a park ranger. Danny was taking classes at the local community college, trying to figure out what you did with your life when your life had been stolen and then given back. They didn't talk about Ghost Unit, didn't talk about the implants, tried to build something normal from the wreckage of what they'd been. It almost worked. Then the package arrived. No return address, no postage, just left on Eva's doorstep like someone had driven by in the night and dropped it off. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note on paper that looked expensive. The note read, "The technology didn't die with Volkov. There are 4 other contractors running the same program. I have proof. I need someone who can't be controlled. Come to the coordinates below if you want to finish what we started. Alone. Bring your brother." No signature. Eva turned the note over. On the back, GPS coordinates for a location in West Virginia, and below that, a single sentence that made her blood run cold. "She's still waiting." Eva showed Danny. They sat at the kitchen table in the house they'd been pretending was home and looked at the note like it was a bomb waiting to go off. "Could be a trap," Danny said. "Probably is. Could be someone trying to restart the program, get us back in the lab." "Yeah. But it could also be real." Danny picked up the USB drive, turned it over. 4 other contractors, 4 other versions of what happened to us. Eva took the note back. Read it again. The handwriting was neat, professional, but the paper had a coffee stain in one corner. Human error. Whoever sent this wasn't government. Governments didn't make mistakes like coffee stains. "What do you want to do?" she asked. Danny was quiet for a long time. Finally he said, "I want to be done. I want to wake up without checking over my shoulder. I want to finish college and maybe meet someone and have a life that doesn't include tactical gear and classified operations. But if there are people still in cells like I was, still being controlled, still crying while some AI uses their body," he met her eyes. "I can't just let that happen, not when I know what it feels like." Eva folded the note, put it in her pocket. "Then I guess we're going to West Virginia." "What about Harding? We could use backup." "No, we dragged him into Syria, almost got him killed. He's earned his quiet life." Eva stood, looked out the window at the Oregon forest that had almost become home. "This one's just us." 3 days later they stood on a ridge in West Virginia, looking down at an old rifle range that hadn't been used in years. Rusted targets, overgrown berms, a small cabin that might have been a clubhouse once. No sign of whoever had sent the note. Eva set up her rifle, the Remington 700 she'd kept from Syria. Some habits died harder than others. Danny took position beside her with a pair of binoculars. They waited. An hour passed, then two. The sun dropped toward the horizon, painting the range in shades of gold and amber. Then movement, a figure walking out of the tree line toward the cabin, alone, no visible weapons. Eva tracked them through her scope. Woman, late 40s maybe, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd been military once. She stopped in the middle of the range, looked directly at Eva's position. Then she held up a sign. Written in marker on cardboard, "I'm unarmed. I just want to talk." Eva lowered her rifle. "What do you think?" "I think she knows we're here but hasn't called in an airstrike." Danny scanned the surrounding woods with his binoculars. "No backup that I can see. Could be hidden. Could be honest." Only one way to find out. They worked their way down the ridge. Took 20 minutes to approach from an angle that gave them sight lines and exit routes. When they stepped out of the trees, the woman was still standing in the same spot. Up close, Eva could see the resemblance to soldiers she'd known. The way the woman stood, the scars on her hands, the look in her eyes that said she'd seen things that didn't wash off. "Captain Mercer," the woman said. "Sergeant Mercer, thank you for coming." "You have us at a disadvantage," Eva said. "I'm nobody, at least nobody who matters anymore." The woman pulled out an ID card, showed it but didn't hand it over. "CIA, retired, name, Ellen Cross. I worked Project Prometheus, Analysis Division. I was the one who recommended shutting it down when the side effects started showing up. And I was overruled. The program continued, got expanded. 4 other defense contractors picked it up after Volkov went rogue. They're still running it, still putting chips in soldiers' heads, still pretending it's about enhancement instead of control." Danny spoke up. "Why tell us?" "Because you're proof it can be stopped. You survived, got free, and you burned Volkov's research." Ellen looked at them with something like hope. "I need you to do it again, 4 more times." Eva shook her head. "We're done. We did our part. Someone else can fight this fight." "There is no one else. Everyone who knows about the program is either part of it or dead. You're the only ones who have been inside, who understand what it really is." Ellen stepped closer. "And you're the only ones who can't be controlled. Your implants are dormant. That makes you invisible to the neural override detection systems." "What about the CIA, NSA? Why not go through official channels?" "Because the official channels are the ones funding this. Pentagon wants obedient soldiers. Contractors want billion-dollar budgets. Congress wants security theater. Everyone's got skin in the game except the people being turned into weapons." The wind picked up, scattered leaves across the old range. Eva thought about Oregon, about the quiet life she'd been building, about waking up without fear for the first time in years. Then she thought about Danny crying in that chair while the AI used his body, about all the other soldiers in cells right now, trapped in their own skulls while someone else drove. "What do you need?" she asked. Ellen smiled, pulled out a tablet, showed them satellite imagery, 4 facilities, different locations, all active, all running versions of Project Prometheus. "Intel coordinates, security specs. I can give you everything you need to hit them, but I can't go with you. I'm flagged. They'd see me coming. And after, when we've burned all 4, then maybe this nightmare finally ends." Eva looked at Danny, her brother, free now but carrying scars that would never fully heal. He looked back at her with the same question in his eyes. "Do we do this? Do we go back into the fire for people we don't know?" Danny nodded first. Eva turned back to Ellen. "We're going to need weapons, equipment, transport. I can get you everything. And Harding, Colonel Jack Harding, if we're doing this, we're not doing it alone." I'll find him. They spent the next hour going over the intel. 4 facilities, 4 different security setups, 4 different versions of hell that needed burning. When they were done, Eva and Danny walked back up the ridge toward where they'd parked. Ellen called after them. Why'd you say yes? You could have walked away, been safe. Eva stopped, didn't turn around. Because Danny asked me once if I was scared of my implant waking up, and I am, every day, but I'm more scared of living in a world where we had the chance to stop this and didn't. They disappeared into the trees. Behind them, Ellen Cross stood in the fading light and allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, some fights could still be won by people who cared more about doing right than staying safe. 3 months later, in a cabin in Montana, Jack Harding opened his door to find Eva and Danny standing on his porch. They looked different, harder, like they'd been carrying weight that kept getting heavier. Sarah and David Miller, Eva said, using their cover names. We need Jack Morrison's help. Harding looked at them, looked past them at the truck parked in his driveway, looked at the gun shop he'd built and the quiet life he'd almost believed in. How bad, he asked. 4 facilities, same as Syria, maybe worse. And you want me to come along? We want you to lead, Danny stepped forward. We know tactics, know how to shoot, but you know how to run an operation, how to keep people alive when everything's falling apart. Harding was quiet for a long moment, then he stepped aside. Come in, we'll need coffee for this conversation. They sat around his kitchen table while Eva laid out the intel. Harding listened, asked questions, pointed out problems with their approach and suggested fixes. By the time the sun came up, they had a plan. It wasn't a good plan, but it was the best they had. When do we start? Harding asked. 2 days. I'll need 1 day to close up the shop, leave things in order. You're really doing this? Eva studied his face, walking away again. I never walked away, just took a different route. Harding stood, moved to a cabinet, pulled out a bottle of whiskey and 3 glasses, to ghosts who refused to stay buried. They drank. And in the morning, they began preparations for a war that would never make the news, fought by people who officially didn't exist, against an enemy that wore the American flag while turning soldiers into slaves. Somewhere in the encrypted files Ellen Cross had compiled, a photograph waited. A woman in a cell, military uniform, eyes vacant, wires running from her head to machines against the wall. Her name tag read TORRES. She'd been waiting for 3 years. Soon she wouldn't have to wait anymore. The ghosts were coming. And this time they weren't running. They were hunting.